Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong will travel to Washington this week for discussions with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other Quad ministers. The meetings come as key tariffs set to be discussed. Wong's visit aims to strengthen ties between Australia and the United States. For more, let's bring in Professor Tim Harcourt from UTS, host of the Airport Economist channel here on Ticker as well. Pretty high-stakes meeting. Obviously, the Australian officials have been trying to get on with Donald Trump throughout the past 6 months, but it's been hard to pin him down.
No, it has been. I mean, I actually think Prime Minister Albanese's been very guarded and very careful with his comments. I mean, some leaders that went in pretty hard against candidate Donald Trump have been frozen out under the presidency, while I think Prime Minister Albanese's been a little bit more careful. Having said that, I mean, he tried at the G7 and other various forums to get a meeting. So looks like it's Penny Wong's turn to be dispatched for the Quad meetings at least.
Yeah, well, the PM headed to the G7 and then President Trump left early to try and deal with the crisis that was unfolding in Iran at that stage. Then Richard Marles headed to NATO to try and get a meeting. Didn't obviously happen. The Defence Minister as well. Let's be honest. There's not much alignment on values between the current Australian government and the current US administration.
I think the government's torn, Aaron. I think there's a very strong traditional pro-United States, pro-Israel faction, probably led by Richard Marles. It was a lot more effective under the days of the Hawke-Keating government when you had Bob Hawke himself, leading that stance. And then you have the traditional left, which is pretty much on the hard left when it comes to Gaza and Iran and Hamas, and that's causing tensions within the government. And there's no Michael Danby type figure in the government now to basically shore up the US-Israel position. There's Josh Burns. There are people like Josh Burns who try, but it's not as strong as it used to be.
So how do they overcome the challenges? So Penny Wong heads to Washington at a time where there's a 10% tariff slapped on Australia, like many other nations, but the steel and aluminium now at 50%. Not that the US is a huge, buyer of Australian steel and metal, but it seems to be a relationship which Australia needs so much for security, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. And the US seems to, they're asking for more to be spent. Australia doesn't want to spend it. What are your views?
I'm amazed at the reaction of Western media and Australian media to a 10% tariffs from the US because it's by Donald Trump. And they said very little about a 220% tariff from China on Australian wine, for example. It seems that the protectionist tariffs, initiated by China, got dealt with pretty lightly, and the Albanese government took a long time to get them off, which they needed to do. Whilst the Trump tariffs, which are a lot lower, people were making a bigger deal of that than the Chinese tariffs. And I'd prefer to have no tariffs at all, Aaron. I think in the background is, of course, the security reliance that Australia has on the US. And we saw with the amazing strikes on the Iran nuclear facilities that, when it comes to advances in technology, the US is right up there and very important for people to be allies with the US in terms of security.
Let's have a look at this man. He is China's ambassador to Australia. Keen to get your thoughts. There's an article in the Australian newspaper today talking about how he has warned the Australian government not to go down the defence spending path to increase defence spending. He says that China's increase in military defence spending has just been normal and natural, still nothing compared to the United States. And he warns that Australia, instead of diverting resources to increasing military spending, should actually be spending that on social services as well. What are your views on that characterisation of Australia and almost a soft warning for Australia?
Well, as Mandy Rice Davies said, he would say that, wouldn't he? The choice of Australia to choose between education, health, defence, whatever, is a matter for Australians, not the ambassador of a foreign country. And increasingly, I interviewed the ambassador on one of my previous Airport Economist shows looking at the relationship, and he's a very erudite scholar in American literature and very articulate. But the constant interference in Australia's domestic policy, in Australia's domestic policy decisions, is quite remarkable, and really, I think you should stick to being a diplomat, not a social commentator.
So Penny Wong obviously heading to the United States, meeting with the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who himself doesn't seem to be as perhaps strongly willed and determined as JD Vance or President Trump himself. This is what she's trying to achieve here. So tariffs, as we said, ties with the US are top priority, and key regional issues on the agenda. A lot of commentators pointing to the weird relationship at the moment between Australia and the US and what Albanese needs to do to mend things. Is Penny Wong the right person to get things back on the right track?
Yeah, it's interesting. Penny Wong's the foreign minister, not the trade minister, but yet they're using her, I guess, as part of her portfolio to look at the tariff issue. I'd imagine that the trade minister Don Farrell's working pretty hard on that as well. But we have a lot of friends in the region. I mean, Penny Wong, since being foreign minister, has forged very good relationships with ASEAN and with the Pacific, and renewed the ties that we've had with Korea and Japan as well, which haven't been negative ties. They've just been a bit neglected by the overall issue of China. So that's important, and of course the Quad includes Japan and India as well. And there's been a huge diplomatic push to improve relationships with India, as we saw with the Airport Economist India series recently on Ticker.
You are right across it all, as always. Professor Tim Harcourt, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.